Good morning, it's Dave of Urban Astro, or at least it's good morning for me. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I wanted to respond to some emails that I've gotten asking for help on how people can get their RC6 in focus. And so this video is going to be in response to those requests, to those questions. Now, the first thing that I'm going to assume, and maybe it's a big assumption to make, but I'm assuming that you've got your RC6 collimated. Now, if you've seen any of my prior videos regarding this RC6, you know that it was a problem to get this thing collimated. In fact, it took me about a year to kind of figure it out and get it to the point where I could collimate this thing. And I repeated the process several times to make sure that it was working well. And I'm kind of amazed because once I've got it collimated, it's pretty much has held collimation. I've been running this thing since January, and I've had no problems with getting focus. I've had no problems with collimation, and I've been generally pleased with the results. I think I need to get a different camera, but that's a different issue. So anyways, my first big assumption is that you've collimated this thing. Now, there were a lot of comments from people when I talked about my struggles with collimation, and some of you said that all that you needed was a Cheshire in order to collimate an RC. And you know, all I can say is God bless you. You're a hero in my book if you can actually collimate an RC6 with just a Cheshire. I bow before you because I just cannot get it done. I struggled and struggled and struggled because people were saying all you really needed was just a Cheshire. And then others said, well, you also need to have a laser collimator. Well, I have a Newtonian. I have a 10-inch Newtonian. And so I have this Hotech laser collimator that's I use to collimate my Newtonian. So I figured that between this laser collimator and my Cheshire eyepiece that I should be able to collimate this 6-inch RC. And the reality is no, I got no joy. I was not able to do so. And then others said, well, if you just had an OCal, you could collimate that scope in no time using the OCal. And the OCal's great. I admit that it's actually pretty nice. I like how it functions, and it does a pretty good job if you want to collimate the secondary and the primary mirror. I think this is a helpful device. The problem is that it doesn't help you with your optical plane tilt. And that's what I found the issue was that no matter how much I tried to collimate the secondary and the primary using this guy, I could never account for the tilt in the optical plane going from the secondary to my camera. So finally, after listening to a lot of different voices and doing a lot of reading and watching a lot of YouTube videos, I finally settled upon the Howie Glatter, the infamous Howie Glatter laser collimator. And not only did I settle on the Howie Glatter, but I also had to get the concentric circle adapter so that way I could get the concentric circles necessary for me to be able to collimate. The other thing that I had to do for collimating was I had to remove the primary mirror in order to remove the baffles so that way I could collimate the secondary. And that's kind of an important step. And with the 8 inches, there's enough distance between the secondary and the outside wall of the telescope that you're able to get your hand in order to be able to take out the baffle. But on the 6-inch, there just is not enough space. And so in order to get the baffle out so that you can adjust the secondary and align it, you need to remove the mirror cell in order to remove the baffles and then reattach the mirror cell. Your mileage may vary, but that's what I found worked. If you've got it adjusted, you got it collimated, and you're able to do a star test, then you should be good to go. But a lot of people said they couldn't even focus. They couldn't figure out the right distancing, and that's really kind of the point of this video, is just to show you what my distancing is, so that way you can see what it is that I've got and see if whether or not your system can match. So here is my optical path right here. So what I've got here is I've got a 25mm spacer right here, and then I've got my tilt adjuster right here, and I got my tilt adjuster from Telescope Services in Germany, and I want to say it's about 10mm thick, it may be 12, somewhere in that neighborhood, but you can see that there's adjustment points right here. Right here's the primary adjustment points for the primary mirror, and then here's the tilt plate adapter adjustment points. And then I've got a 50mm spacer here, and then I got my focuser here, which I also got from Telescope Services in Germany. And this was a rack and pinion one, and I wanted a rack and pinion because if I put a heavy optical train here, if I put, you know, like a filter wheel and a camera and all that other kind of, all those other goodies, those things have some weight to them, and I wanted something that would not slip. And I was afraid that the stock focuser would slip. And so I got this focuser, which I got from Telescope Services in Germany. And I also got the EAF adapter that fits this particular focuser so that I could attach a ZWO EAF so I can do automatic focusing. And it works, I would say it works pretty well. I'm still tweaking the focusing routine. I'm still tweaking some of those parameters. I don't quite think I've got the backlash exactly right, because every now and then it will produce some weird focusing routines. And so I keep going in and just slightly tweaking, and they're getting better and better and better as time goes on. So that's just part and parcel of working with an EAF. And as you can see here on my draw tube, I am about 26mm out on my draw tube here. I believe that there's another 25 to 30mm left, I believe. And so I'm in the middle range here, so that works out great because I got enough space to go either way, so it's perfectly set up. And then what I've got here is a ZWO filter drawer, and so I can put in filters. Like I've got the Antlia dual band filter there, and then I've got my camera, which has 17.5 mil back focus here to the sensor. This is the ASI 071. And I think where probably a lot of people are having trouble is this focuser is a little bit bigger than the stock focuser. And so I think if you're using the stock focuser, you're gonna need to add probably the other 25mm ring here in order to help you to achieve focus, because this stock focuser is, I mean, there's a lot of length there. We're talking at least 100+ millimeters of length here. So that's a lot of focuser right there. Goes basically from these knurl knobs here all the way to back here. So all this distance right there is focuser. And of course now it's out by 26mm. So that's part of that 100+ millimeter space there. But anyways, I'm able to achieve focus, and it's been working out great. Now, some people want to try to get focus with this guy here, which is the Apex ED L from Starizona, and it's a 0.65 reducer. And I picked this thing up because I wanted to be able to reduce the scope, thinking that perhaps 1377 millimeter focal length was a little bit too much. But what I found is that 1377 is perfect. And this thing gets it down around, I think, like just over 700. And to be honest with you, I have a 10-inch Newtonian, which is 1016 millimeters, and I can put a reducer on that thing and get that thing down to around 600. And so I'm not sure if I really need something like this. Have I been able to reach focus with this thing? Nah, I'm still struggling with that. Now, this thing has 55 millimeter back focus. In fact, I made a little label to put it on here so that I could remind myself when I do bring it out and try to use it. And so I know that I need to put additional spacers on, and I'm able to do that, and I still struggle to get focus with this thing. So I'm just trying to master the 1377 millimeter for right now, and I figured that later on this year, this fall, I'll break this guy out and try to figure it out. What I have found is that it's really easier to deal with one thing at a time in astrophotography than trying to throw in as much stuff as possible, because there's just too many variables and it just gets to be way complicated. So here are some images that I've gotten with this thing this past spring. My first time really being able to do galaxy season, and I first started off shooting Malat 15 just as a test using my 533 MC Pro, and that's a shot. That will be the first shot, and then followed up by shots of galaxies that I've been shooting. Now, are they perfect? No way. And I think part of it is the camera, and part of it is the resolution of the camera, and there's some other issues going on that I need to work on. But for first run, if you will, of a season, I think I've managed to get some decent shots. And I'm looking forward to next year when I can maybe improve upon those shots. And like I say, I'm looking at the possibility of maybe having to get a different camera in order to help me out with that. So anyways, if you found this at all helpful, please feel free to go ahead and like this video. It helps me to know whether or not this kind of content is useful to you. And until next time, clear skies and happy guiding.